Welcome one, welcome all to the Occupy Fantasy Podcast. It's the Week 14 edition, and for a lot of you guys, you're either fighting to get in the playoffs or your postseason is beginning.
Yep. Or if you're in one of those leagues where it starts in week 15, you're trying to get that last playoff spot, or if you're fortunate enough to have a bye this week, lots of crazy situations going on. What's up, Lee?
Man, I gotta admit, like the league I care about, I'm washed, man. Um, 500 season, just a lot of inconsistencies. It just, wasn't my year. I felt good, week 6, week 7, but then went on a tough losing skid and wasn't able to bounce back. In this other league that I'm in, I actually have the best team by a wide margin. I had an incredible regular season and earned a bye week, so yeah, still playing for something there. But within your heart, like that league that all your pride is invested in, it sucks to miss the playoffs in that.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter about the money, right? Like you would gladly flip those two leagues if you had the opportunity. I know,
No,
like,
without question, man.
yeah, some of my bigger money leagues I'm out in, but I'm in contention with my local leagues, friends and family leagues, the ones that I care about the most that I've
Mhm.
been in for a while. So yeah, it's certainly interesting. I know rosters are going to look funny this week. It looks like we're playing preseason DFS with some of
Yeah.
the guys will be starting. So it's an interesting week.
And we'll jump into all the running backs out there that you probably have either claimed off the waiver wire or are looking into. And then yeah, for DFS players, we have the most I think the most exciting month of the year for DFS because you have that end of the year football GPP, you have hockey, basketball in full swing, the holidays, right? So maybe you have time off work, you don't have the same busy schedule where you can yeah, have to sneak out or whatever it is that however you make your lineups, and then on top of that, it's the holidays coming up.
Yeah, always a good time of the year. Like I said, getting off work is the is the biggest thing for everybody. Get some time off away from the job and more time to spend on fantasy sports. That's what we all love. I mean, for me, it's always my family is full of degenerates, so maybe I'm different, but it's always a special tradition because Christmas, the week of Christmas, is week 16 of the NFL season, which is generally fantasy championship week.
Mhm.
So whether it's Christmas Eve or leading up to Christmas or after Christmas, it always kind of coincides together. Always a great time of the year. So, and ideally, you're in a championship game at
Right,
the
right.
time. So,
No, it's such a fun time, man. And I mean, here at Occupy, like me and Brian, we always we're always transparent with our followers. We don't pretend to be people we're not, and um, we wanted to follow up. So we've been talking a lot of this NHL GPP, this $333 tournament that we've been targeting via $2 tickets, $5 satellite entries because of the massive overlay, right? On regular nights, you'll see it fill up 50, 60%. And um, we both earned a handful of tickets and we're only able to cash one. So,
yeah, not a great performance from us. Last week we said hopefully we can have a celebratory podcast this week. It's certainly not the case. So, but like you said, we want to be transparent. We're not some gods of DFS that crush everything. And, you know,
I mean, I
even
was
when
getting ready to retire this morning, to be honest. That feeling.
it was rough, man. All the work we put in to get those tickets, all the work putting in lineups yesterday,
Mhm.
it's certainly disappointing because even a mint cash can boost your bankroll.
Yeah,
Going for on your end 1 for 5, my end 0 for
right.
10. Just pretty disheartening. But these things happen. We get these opportunities, a handful of times a year. You're bound to go 0 for airball once or twice. So
Yeah, completely. I was able to cash one, finished like 38th out of 250. But of course, with all the time and energy put into it, like that if someone told me that would happen going into it, I would have been pretty blown about it. But hey, it's better than zero. And I'm in some satellites tonight. I'm right back on the horse because there's massive overlay, and um, just because it didn't work out doesn't mean the process should be thrown out, right?
right, still a long term strategy. You understand GPPs are hard. it's not going to be an easy win every time you get in just because you won tickets. But any regrets for you as far as like leading up to the contest, the amount of satellites you played, or
Ooh.
any regrets building lineups yesterday?
Um,
I have one myself, so if you don't know, I can go first. Or
Honestly, no regrets as far as kind of the strategy going into it, right? I was able to get 5 tickets out of the 7 max, so put me right in position with all the pros and the sharks that enter. As far as any regrets, with the line, I mean, outside of not picking the right guys, right?
deep
I
regret picking
I
the wrong players.
think it sounds corny to say, but not fully trusting the model. They had Montreal's top line as one of the better plays, slipped through the cracks. I had Florida's top line, which took off, but I paired them with Tampa Bay, and they didn't deliver. But I mean, no regrets, man. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you won a GPP with how many people? 2,500 people last year, right?
Right, right.
And I still remember the teams you used. You stacked the Montreal Canadiens and the New York Islanders, including Yaroslav Halak, the Islanders goalie. Who, I mean, the Islanders last year, for those don't follow hockey, were given up more shots than any other team in the league, right? And at that point, the only logic of playing Halak was, hey, maybe he'd stop a lot of shots, but I mean, they were giving up the most goals. So, but it was a larger pool. 2,500 people is much different than 250 people. But point is, everything looks good until the results take place, right? And then it's easy to second guess. So, no real regrets. We'll hopefully do better next time around. What's
Yeah.
your regret?
Yeah, my mind is kind of on the same line, just not trusting the model. I wanted to dig deeper, thinking that we needed different lineups or different approaches to beat some of these pros in this $333 GPP. But like you said, I won the GPP last year using the model. Don't know why I decided to stray against it this year. Like you said, Montreal was far and away the best stack. For whatever reason, I didn't use them in my 3 lineups yesterday, and they went off for 6 points combined. So
Sheesh.
so yeah, just trusting the model. Like, and I know our goal at Occupy Fantasy is to help people grow their bankroll and pick the right contest, but our tools are pretty awesome too. The Occupy model, it can stack up with these pros. So I regret just not following that. And
Right.
but yeah, like I said, we're transparent. We're here to teach people, for people to learn and learn from our mistakes. That way, when you get into a GPP next time, don't stray from your normal strategy.
Yeah, completely. And I mean, yeah, for what it's worth, right? Like we always talk about, DraftKings or like the transparency that these DFS providers now are kind of forced as far as saying X amount, like what 15% of people won, money or were profitable last month. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, our goal, honestly, like, and we've talked about this, is just to help people improve that, right? Because at the end of the day, like there's no way anyone that tells you, hey, like you can make a career out of DFS, or like you can win to like and quit your day job and like this is how you do it, they're full of shit. Like most likely it's not going to happen. But if you can be a sustainable player, be profitable, even if it's taking your $100 bankroll and a month after it's $130, you're already
You're the
doing
top 15% of players, right?
completely, right? And if we can take you in that direction while putting you in position to have opportunities to take home a 10, 15, 20, $1 million payday, like with the NFL end of the year tournament coming up, that's all we want to do. Like that's our number one goal, mate, because it's fun. We all love DFS for the same reasons. Um, the sports that we love, the statistics that we love, the game theory, the strategy, building lineups, right? Watching the action unfold. That's fun. If it wasn't fun, we wouldn't be doing it. But we want to make sure that you're not just burning bread. We want to make sure you're not, doing things that are unsustainable for this hobby and passion.
Right. It all comes back to the ultimate guide. The very first chapter is, what is your goal in DFS? Like, what are you trying to do? For most people, it's not to, and it's like you said, it's unrealistic to become a pro DFS player. It takes a lot more work, and the return on investment isn't as high as you think. So,
Mhm.
like you said, whether it's to earn enough money to buy your wife and take her out to dinner at the end of the month, whether it's to save up some travel funds, pay for your hobbies, whatever it may be. But then having a satellite strategy in your back pocket to, 5 or 6 times a year, have that outside shot of winning
Yeah.
some a decent amount of money, and it might not be life changing. The $1 million one certainly would be for sure,
Right.
but enough to pay off a loan or a car or whatever it may be. So
Yeah. There you go. So, week 14, and like we said, a lot of activity on the waiver wire. A lot of guys that might make you think it's preseason. So, let's run through a few backfields, right, and their situations, and I want to hear where you stand, right? If you're tilting one way, or where also you think maybe the DFS community will be tilting this week. So, Steelers, we know early in the week James Conner is indeed out, which it's good to know earlier than later. But now we have a situation with Jalen Samuels, who crazy as far as like when you think about him not being a running back, right?
yeah.
Um, Stephen Ridley, a guy who would, if this was 2012, like, hey, you're looking at a good RB right here. But what do you make of the Steelers' backfield?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to note here, and I had a member and a follower ask me this yesterday. It's like, do you think James Conner is back for week 15? This is week 14.
Mm,
And I would say no right now. They ruled him out on Tuesday, which a player gets ruled out on Tuesday before practice participation on Wednesday. It's generally a bad sign for
yeah.
upcoming week. So I would be prepared to be without him through week 15 and just pray and hope that he comes back in time for the championship game. So I think we see Jalen Samuels, Stephen Ridley, which not a lot of people are talking about. I know a lot of people are running to the waiver wires to grab Jalen Samuels, but
Mm,
Samuel said it himself today. Today's Wednesday. We're recording this Wednesday evening. He said it after practice, talking to the media. He's like, "I'll start the game on Sunday against Oakland, but Ridley's going to mix in. It's a team effort." Mike Tomlin has said it's going to be a running back by committee. Everything that they're saying to the media is that it will be multiple backs. So while Pittsburgh is a pretty pass-heavy team, they generally are more run-heavy on the road, which they are traveling to Oakland this week. So
mm,
Ridley should get some carries. And as a 10-point, 11-point favorite, if they are up in the second half, they're running the clock. They'll be running the clock out with Ridley, not Jalen Samuels. So
yeah.
this could be a close to a 50-50 split. But as we note in the model, passing targets are worth way more than running back carries. So Samuels will likely have more value on the day, but I wouldn't discount Ridley. And if you missed out on some of these guys that we'll talk about here in the running back section for your season long league, I think you could do a lot worse if you're missing Melvin Gordon, missing James Conner, missing
Yeah.
Kareem Hunt. Like you could do a lot worse than Stephen Ridley this week.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, it's a huge game for the Steelers, right? And I mean, everyone, like at this point, I think waivers have processed, right?
Right.
And especially by the time people get around to this podcast, and I mean, if you have both guys, or if you have one or the other, like you're probably in a position where you're gonna play him, maybe in a flex, right? But you look at the matchup. I mean, the Steelers are huge favorites, even though they're traveling to Oakland, right? Usually, you think the home team gets some edge. I mean, Steelers are 10-point favorites, so both guys could score a touchdown. Both guys could total 50, 60, 80 yards.
And in DFS, both are in play. Samuel is going to be the more popular pick, especially on DraftKings.
Mhm.
But you look, Samuel's 3,700, Ridley's 3,300.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, it's this week is going to be especially crazy because there's so many near minimum price backs, and
Right.
we'll talk about them here all pretty shortly. But um, Samuel seems like just right now on Wednesday, the perfect low risk play. Right, should have a high floor in the passing game. Should be pretty popular. Whereas Ridley is a guy you could pivot with, especially probably on FanDuel too, where Ridley will get the goal line work.
Mhm.
It just seems like a very clear cut scenario of what you should do with these two guys in DFS this week.
Completely. So moving on, and let's talk about what's kind of going on here with Justin Jackson.
Yeah, so I've mentioned this a few times on our podcast. I'm in a couple of dynasty leagues. For my player evaluation, I mean I would love to say I'm a great player evaluator. I can pull up YouTube with the best of them and watch highlights.
Yeah.
I defer all of my player evaluation tape watching to Matt Waldman of footballguys.com. He puts out this like 2,000 page publication every April. I scoop it up every year because it has. I mean, he does all the work for you, and then you can make your own decisions, and you can combine that with analytics from your favorite analytics fantasy writers, and find some guys that you like. And he was extremely high on Justin Jackson this offseason. In his rookie scouting report, love Justin Jackson. And if you were around during preseason DFS, we played him a bunch. We talked about him a bunch as being a talented guy and getting a lot of work in that backfield. So he looked last week. He looked all the part. Everyone's excited for Austin Eckler to play. And here comes Justin Jackson. And the first guy that Phillip Rivers mentions in the post-game interview is Justin Jackson having a breakout game. So what 8 for 63, and Eckler just couldn't get anything going. And it seems to me that while Eckler is the guy, I think Justin Jackson gets the majority of the work this week, and I'll tell you why. Today, the head coach Anthony Lynn came out and said Austin Eckler, he's wearing down a bit. He's a key special teams guy for us, and we're gonna scale him back a bit. Justin could get more work this week as 14-point home favorites. This seems like a slam dunk spot for Justin Jackson. What do you think? Do you think people will be as tuned in as we are? Are we overselling it? What do you think?
Well, first of all, as you mentioned, kind of preseason and having that sort of perspective on him. And then, yeah, like, we're neither of us are NFL pro scouts, right? Not that the pro scouts even know what the hell they're talking about, but just pull up this dude's highlights. Just watch him. I mean, he's powerful. He's explosive. He looks the part, right? And that's, I mean, compared to, guys like Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler, like it takes a lot to say that, like, wow, didn't really see much of a drop off
at all. Yeah,
he's been a beast the last 2 weeks. I know yards per carry aren't necessarily the biggest indicator, but I mean, he's looked real solid. Like last 2 weeks combined, he has 110 yards on 15 carries, right? He looks the part. I mean, that it's one of these things. It comes down to this. Number one, the game script. They're 2 touchdown favorites against the Bengals team, who's pretty much they're water, dude. Like they're Jeff Driscoll at quarterback, AJ Green out for the season. I mean, the money line speaks for itself. The Chargers, to win $100 on the Chargers, you have to drop about $1,100, right? So, in other words, it's a trap game, right? But the huge home favorites combined with just how good he's looked. I mean, look, we don't know for sure if Melvin Gordon is out yet. He didn't practice today. It's looking like he won't play, but at the same time, he's tough as hell, and we've seen this guy rise from the dead, just like Matt Breida before. But if he's out, Justin Jackson very much in play. Austin Eckler has a defined role. I think that they want to preserve him. I think Justin Jackson is someone in a favorable game script should see 15 carries.
I think so too. I completely agree. I have Austin Eckler in a couple of leagues, and after Sunday night and then Monday morning, I'm thinking, my biggest fear this upcoming week is they want to preserve Eckler, let Jackson get the bulk of the work here in this Week 14 game, and then get Melvin Gordon back for that big divisional showdown Week 15 against the Chiefs.
Yeah,
read between the lines, Gordon's not going to play this week, especially after he convinced coaches to let him play last time he was injured and he went out and busted his knee. So you better be sure he's going to be 100% before he comes back. So
yeah.
Justin Jackson, 3,800 on DraftKings. He's another guy in this range. You can legit have 3 cheap running backs this week.
It's crazy.
And Jackson, the thing, he caught 44 balls as in his last year in college, so he can catch balls out of the backfield too. So I don't know, man. I think we'll get more clarity as the week goes on, but I have no trouble projecting Jackson for more carries and fantasy points than Austin Eckler this week.
And we think highly of Austin Eckler, so that's not an understatement there. Moving on to the Ravens backfield, right? So they're getting our guy Kenneth Dixon back. And Gus Edwards, who's filled in for Alex Collins. I mean, everyone knows him. He's a pretty much a household DFS name at this point, right?
Yeah.
Especially after his last 3 weeks, where he's gotten 60 carries the last 3 weeks. You don't usually find that sort of volume, especially now with the offense the Ravens are running with Lamar Jackson. But he is kind of dealing with an ankle injury. He's questionable. And then you have Kenneth Dixon, who we haven't seen in a while. Where are you tilting here? Because obviously Gus Edwards, if he plays, he seems like a hands down safer option.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Dixon made his return last week, and made his presence felt pretty immediately. 8 carries, 37 yards, caught a ball in the passing game. Edwards still hasn't had a target in his 3 starts, so I mean, he's basically a 0 when it comes to receiving.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that caught my eye was late in the Atlanta game, Gus Edwards limped off the field. He came into the game dealing with an ankle injury, limped off the field, didn't return for the rest of the game, and everything was kind of hush hush. And it's like, okay, if he's out, then Dixon turns into a key player here, because they put Alex Collins on IR with basically a phantom injury, right? You heard what Harbaugh said last week. He said, we need the roster spot. It's not something you say about a guy who has legitimate injury. No. So clearly they like Dixon, and Dixon is in all 4 seasons he's played, he's been top 5 in the league as far as missed tackles per touch. Like, this guy he's elusive as shit, breaks tackles like nobody else. And if he gets carries, he'll put up fantasy numbers, and so many in the fantasy community are high on him and have held him in dynasty leagues because of that fact. So we have to watch practice reports this week. If Edwards can't go, Dixon at 3,200, another cheap, a huge upside play against this league's worst rush defense in Kansas City. I just have a feeling that Edwards will end up playing.
Right.
And we might see closer to a 50-50 split than we've seen in recent weeks, just based on game script and the varying factors between their talent levels.
Right. The Ravens are very high on Kenneth Dixon. I mean, this is a guy, he's played in 14 games, right, so far. He got drafted in 2016. He missed all last year, right? He's never been like 100% fully healthy, right, in a non-crowded backfield. And this is as close as he's kind of been, right, with like being the guy. I mean, look, earlier in the year against, his last game he played, he got 13 carries for 44 yards opening week against the Bills and scored a touchdown. So I think there's no doubt, especially with what they did with Alex Collins here, they have confidence in this guy. They have confidence in both guys. If Gus Edwards is more questionable on Saturday, like Friday, and the reports are like suspect, I'm sure Kenneth Dixon is going to be, they're not going to wait around. They're going to utilize him. They're going to have plays in the game plan for this guy. And he was effective last week. He very well could, in the right situation, have a 100-yard game and score multiple touchdowns.
Absolutely. And I think along the Stephen Ridley line, if you're listening to this podcast Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, even late Wednesday night, whatever it is, and waivers have already passed, Dixon is one of those guys that is still likely to be available, because it's not like he had a breakout game this past week. It's not like Edwards is hurt or anything. So he's still likely to be available. He was available in all the leagues. I was able to scoop him in. So I think if you're listening to this season long, he's a perfect guy you want to stash for the playoffs, because if he takes over for Edwards, or if the game script gets out of hand, or whatever it may be, he has a talent level that you can start him in the playoffs and feel comfortable. Because a lot of if you got some injuries, your playoff lineup this week and next week is legit going to look like a preseason DFS running back.
Right. Oh, it definitely will, and it's not a bad thing. And I mean, I hate going back to college because it's so long ago. But I mean, for a guy, like I said, he got his rookie year was 2016. He played 12 games there, didn't play last year. He's only played in 2 games this year. He had a knack for the end zone, man. I mean, this dude had 3 seasons in which he scored over 20 total touchdowns, right?
It's insane. Playing for Louisiana Tech, that's nuts.
Right. And I know, I don't want to paint that picture, but like, he's only 24 years old. The Ravens are high on him. John Harbaugh, that whole organization, like, there's a reason they were like, all right, let's get Alex Collins out the way. We have our guys that we want here. So he could. like this is the type of player that I'd love in a high risk contest because he could get 22. He could end up taking Gus Edwards' role and getting 23 carries for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like it sounds crazy, but like he has that sort of upside.
I mean, who would you rather have like on your offense in this game, assuming it turns into a shootout, right? Assuming Baltimore can't control the clock like they want to, and let's just say Kansas City is scoring at will in your defense. You want the grinder Gus Edwards, or do you want some dynamic back in there that can get you chunk yards? And that's Dixon. So I agree with you. I think it's a perfect high risk play, and it's definitely somebody you want to stash in season long.
Oh yeah. What do you think of? I mean, just the point spread, right? Like considering it's in Arrowhead, um, the Chiefs only being a 6. I mean, assume they get 3 points for being at home, right? They're only 6.5 point favorites, which I mean, it's a lot, in the context of most games. But when you look at it, like, it shows a lot of confidence in Lamar Jackson and also what the Ravens have done the last few weeks, with this kind of ball control offense.
Yeah, I mean they're dominating time and possession. Like they're number one, but like far and away in the league over these last 3 weeks in time and possession. So that spread actually moved through 7. It was I think like 8.5 when it opened. Now it's down to 6.5. It just blasted right through that key number.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of confidence. I mean, for me, as much as I would love to see Baltimore win this game, for me personally, I have a Baltimore Super Bowl ticket. I have a Baltimore over 8 win ticket. I have the Chargers to win the AFC West ticket. So for me, I can't be any more on board and biased for Baltimore in this game as possible. But just taking a step back, 6.5 points with a rookie on the road, it seems like a pretty low spread. It's just real curious spread.
Right. It's certainly like whoa, right? Like it makes you think, lean towards Kansas City. But I gotta say, I've just been impressed with what Baltimore is doing. I think there's always something to be said for like just going against the grain, right? And the fact that they had Lamar Jackson and not only ready to go like at this point in the season, but an offense to revolve around his skill sets has taken a lot of defenses by surprise, believe it or not. I mean, you'd think, okay, we're game planning for Lamar Jackson, right? But this Ravens team has new life, and football is a game of confidence. We see it every season. Teams heat up this time of year, teams that we may have discounted a couple of weeks ago, right? And then also amazing teams that were like no doubt Super Bowl contenders, the Saints. They just dropped a game to Dallas that no one, I mean, I didn't see it coming, but now it makes all the sense in the world because look, these teams, we're not going to have 3 15-1 teams, right?
Right.
So you kind of see it. It's a game with the Chiefs looking ahead. They got the Chargers next week. I can see it. I can honestly see the Ravens pull this off.
I mean, the Chiefs have one of the worst defenses.
Atrocious.
So it's not out of the question that they just run the ball down their throats and control that clock, and this turns into a 23-20 game, which would be exactly the type of game Baltimore would need to win.
Mm-hmm.
But just from a fantasy perspective, it's I think we talked about this in our preseason podcast, just the value of having those offensive guys on staff who have worked with Michael Vick. They worked with Colin Kaepernick during his successful years out in San Francisco. They knew when they drafted Lamar Jackson that they could craft an offense quickly if need be to fit his skill set, and they've done so. And it just begs the question, just with Washington and all the stuff going on. Like it just comes down to wanting to do it and being flexible with your system as opposed to trying to square peg round hole fitting guys into your quote unquote your system. So,
don't get me started now because it ticks me off. Like it's like, how do I don't want to support a team that's so stubborn. Like it's like they really believe that Mark Sanchez and his familiarity with what he's been here for like a week and a half, like that's the route we want to go. Like or Josh Johnson, it's like no, you guys are all fools. And at the end of the day, I'm going to enjoy watching teams that are progressive, teams that are willing to adapt to players' skill sets, teams that aren't just stuck in the ways of, oh, this worked 10 years ago, or this is how we grew up, playing football and art. Like, screw that. And there's a reason why we see teams that are good find success, teams that are stubborn, rinse and repeat.
I'm going to write a book probably, and it's going to be called Failing the Right Way. You can quote, you can justify it in the NFL as a coach, like, look, we got Mark Sanchez. 3 of our coaches know him. He's won in this league. We tried. We really tried. It's like, no, you didn't fucking try. It's like, okay, whether or not you think Kaepernick deserves a shot, so that deserves an entire series of podcasts on that. And he hasn't played in a couple years. I understand all of that, and maybe Kaepernick's not the guy, but signing a guy you know is bad, I'd rather sign a guy for the vet minimum who I don't know is good or bad,
right?
Than sign someone who I fucking know is so bad that
Take
he will not win. Just take a chance. Look what Bill Belichick did when Jimmy G got hurt and Brady was out. Designed an option offense around Jacoby Brissett. It was not even that mobile, first of all. Designed an option offense around him in 3 days for a Thursday night game. They go out and win.
And what did they trade him for?
Well, first round or second round pick, whatever it was, right? So there you go.
And I mean, and I'm looking at the list of, let's see, let's see who's a free agent at the moment right now. And I'm like, okay, look, I get it. Like, it's not like there's so many options, but surely there's someone from preseason that there's film on, right? Like somewhere around the league, some 4th string quarterback, 5th string quarterback, undrafted rookie, sign them. Let's see what they can do. At least there's benefit in taking a chance with an unknown commodity versus one that's known and that we know stinks. So
like, why sign Tom Savage? Like, what is he, like, seriously, what is he going to do? Give me Tim Boyle, 4th string quarterback for the Packers, who was slinging it in the preseason over a guy like we know is like certified just a terrible quarterback in the NFL. Just give me a shot. And it goes to a larger point, and I don't think an NFL team will ever do this just because, like I said, it's not failing the right way. If you can't get a top name free agent quarterback, you can't get one in the draft, and you're kind of in that middle position at quarterback, and you're kind of stuck. You could do what the Ravens are doing with Lamar Jackson. Just invest in 3 cheap-ass quarterbacks that can run read option and triple option plays and be better than these teams that are starting Mark Sanchez and Brock Osweiler and whatnot. But no team will ever do that because, like I said, it require a very patient owner and an innovative coaching staff, which never seems to be.
Right. So. Well, we'll cut that rant there because we can go for days on it. So how else can we help fantasy owners this week? I know we talked about John Kelly and obviously with Todd Gurley and the Rams, possibly in a position to rest players like, which first of all, like if I hear a Todd Gurley owner complain about that, just like, same way they complain about him, taking a knee or like not, scoring a touchdown, I'll slap you because like, yeah, it comes with the territory. All right. If you're going to get a guy who's going to get you a bajillion points every week, like you can at least take that. Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we'll see if they're in the position to rest a starter in week 16 or God forbid you have some crazy league where your championship's in week 17, and that's definitely possible. But also in the rare case that he gets hurt. I mean, we've seen this like just onslaught of injuries. Malcolm Brown, who was his backup, has been put on injured reserve, randomly had shoulder surgery. So John Kelly, favorite of ours, seemingly we played him every week in preseason DFS. He was like the only running back who played for them most weeks, and he just got like 20 carries every week. Super talented guy, catches the ball out of the backfield. Perfect guy. I mean, do you want someone like Doug Martin on your bench that you'll never start, or Frank Gore? Like you're literally never going to win a championship with Frank Gore on your fantasy team. Just cut him and get these high upside guys like John Kelly. God forbid sometimes they're Gurley. You have a running back one. So you're not going to use John Kelly this week, but just someone to stash in that Kenneth Dixon range. So.
Well, to play a little devil's advocate, right? Because and I'm all here for talking about Frank Gore and Doug Martin, the fantasy dinosaurs, is like not it, Chief. But 2 teams that are playoff teams in the league I care about actually they started both of these guys in the flex right now. Doug Martin, I think we know how unfavorable the Raiders game scripts usually are, but and last week he did play the Chiefs, but here's someone that like you can count on him getting double-digit carries, right, and potentially scoring a touchdown. Would you really rather have someone like let's say you're a playoff team, right? If you're a playoff team, you probably have good running backs, right? You don't just make the playoffs with bums at running back. And let's say Doug Martin is your 4th running back, right? Like you consider playing him in the flex, but let's say most times you won't, but you very well on any like last week against the Chiefs, all right, I'll take that matchup, right?
Sure.
Would you really rather have John Kelly? Let's say you also have Todd Gurley, right? Would you rather have John Kelly than Doug Martin?
I think if he's your fourth, I mean, it's a no-brainer. If he's your third, and then you're probably not dropping John Kelly for him, I would certainly drop him for any of these other guys we've talked about,
Yeah,
Ridley or Samuels or
absolutely.
whatever. But for if he's a flex starter, it's hard to drop John Kelly because he legit may score 0 points over the next 3 weeks. So, yeah, I think it depends on your team. John Kelly is a different story. He's a legitimate handcuff, where these other guys will actually be worthy of playing this week, week 14. So,
No, good point. Let's talk about wide receivers, right? And I mean,
actually, real quick, can we talk
yeah.
about the one last running back, Jeff Wilson for San Francisco?
Oh yeah,
Because
absolutely.
Wolverine Matt Breida, like James Conner, was ruled out on Tuesday, which was maybe the most surprising news
Yeah,
of the entire season because Breida's
right.
played every single
Like
week.
he's impossible to get out of the lineup.
So I don't
No,
know what happened. He tweaked his ankle in warmups. Jeff Wilson, who had like 8 catches, like 13 carries last week, is going to play full time on Sunday. So I think he's right up there with these other guys and maybe one of the best options. And once again, 3,700 on DraftKings, probably
he's
one of
looked
the best plays
good.
of the week.
No, he looked good last week, and the key is his ability to catch the ball in a Kyle Shanahan offense. And I think he had what 8 receptions last week.
Yeah, 8 catches against the Seahawks. Now that was a catch-up game, but like he looked good in the run game, and this 49ers offense is third in the league in rush yards, and that's with just this like conglomerate of various running backs being inserted after McKinnon went down. So
Yeah,
I think he's probably maybe the best option of these guys this week.
I think it's hard to argue. I mean, he's going to be the guy, right? We're not really worried about um, Kyle Juice. Like, as he's not going to steal carries from him. He might take a couple targets, but you're looking at obviously a downgrade from Wolverine, but like someone who could literally put up those numbers. He could get you. He's out of all these guys, I think he's the one that I'd say has the highest floor and highest ceiling.
I think that's fair. Okay, so let's just say if you were making, let's say you're putting in McCaffrey in as your running back one on DraftKings, your cash game lineup this week. It sounds like you're putting Jeff Wilson at number 2. If you're going cheap at running back for your flex, number 3 running back, who would you prefer out of those guys? Jalen Samuels, Ridley, Justin Jackson? I guess those
It's a
3
tough
really.
one, right? It's a tough one. I mean, obviously Jeff Wilson's head and shoulders above him. The Steelers backfield and the Ravens backfield, like so much can kind of change with the game script. But I think I think if and we're talking cash game.
Yeah, talking cash games. Yeah, just high floor.
You're killing me here because I mean these guys, it's. I don't have an answer for you. I'll tell you who I'd take in a higher risk contest.
Kenneth Dixon.
Yeah,
All
I'm
right,
all over Kenneth Dixon. But who would you take? Who do you trust the most out of these guys?
I don't know. I'm a slave to ownership, so probably Samuels, just because I think he'll be the highest owned guy of the bunch, and he can catch passes, and we kind of know what his role is. If there's more news coming late in the week about Justin Jackson's role, he would take over for me. But I think number 1 is Jeff Wilson. I think we agree there.
Yeah, no, I think that, for Jalen Samuels, his role in the passing game, it's a great point. And Justin Jackson is like I think he's the nicest one, like out of those guys.
Oh, yeah.
So, and sometimes, and that's the thing is we anticipate, we try and predict like what happens, who's going to get the most volume, but at the end of the day, a football game is played, and then what happens is someone busts a 25-yard run because they're really good, and all of a sudden the coaching staff is like, all right, forget it, like you're the guy now, right? We're going to feed the hot hand. So I see a lot of that here with all of these guys here, and honestly, like the value is just unreal. It's going to be so funny looking at people's lineups this week.
It's gonna be insane. And you mentioned unpredictable volume, right? And it can go the other way too. It's like we get a situation like Aaron Jones, who just out of nowhere gets like 50% of the snaps for no reason, and then McCarthy gets fired. So, I mean, it can go both ways.
It can definitely go both ways. So what I was saying, moving on to receiver, right? And this is what I love about this time of year in fantasy is I swear, like, you get a lot. injuries aren't good. We're not like injuries suck in football. And for these people that are, no matter how much money they make, like a concussion or a broken, like that shit's not fun. It's terrible. But
well, actually, you know what? I want to comment because you'll see these idiots on the internet be like, "Well, you could pay me $20 million. I'll tear my Achilles all day." That's like the most loser mentality I've ever heard. Like that, if you say that, you've never won anything in your life. So
yeah, get out of here, man. But like what I love about this time of year is you get so many guys given opportunities now, right? And a lot of fantasy, like you make the playoffs, right? You're already feeling good about your team, right? It's hard to almost change your thinking or get super creative now because you've been successful and you're not going to want to bench maybe some guy that's helped you get here for maybe 2 weeks ago, some guy like Dante Pettis, right? Who all of a sudden now after what he did last week is I mean, if he wasn't on everyone's on every league's roster last week, he's definitely going to be this week, right? So looking ahead, what like give me one or two receivers here that you at the surface it might sound crazy if you're considering starting them over maybe let's say you have Emmanuel Sanders who's now like unfortunately probably out for the season. But give me like one or two receivers that because receivers like the most volatile position. You can catch a 50. You don't need many targets to turn in an incredible fantasy day. You can have 4 catches, 130 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Give me like one or two receivers that like you're willing to bet on, right? And say, all right, I'm playing against an owner who has Todd Gurley and McCaffrey, and their team is really good. It's the playoffs. The stakes are high. I'm willing to like roll the dice. Like, what flex receiver are you willing to throw in that's probably on a free agent or maybe on the waiver wire?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but the one guy that comes to mind, if you're playing a Todd Gurley type juggernaut team in the playoffs and you're going to need to swing for the fences, the number one guy for me is Robert Foster of Buffalo, and it sounds scary catching passes from Josh Allen, but you gotta look at the numbers here and look at the facts surrounding the situation, right? And I almost said Deshaun Hamilton, who's a talented route runner, is going to directly replace Emmanuel Sanders, but he's not going to command the volume that Emmanuel got. So I go with Robert Foster, and Josh Allen is throwing deep at the highest rate in the league right now. They just cut Kelvin Benjamin. They just cut Andre Holmes because they want to get their younger guys more run. Foster was buried at Alabama. Terrible quarterback play. Couldn't get on the field there, couldn't put up numbers. But if you look at his numbers, he finally started getting played.
For what it's worth, he was a 5-star prospect coming into Alabama.
I didn't know that either, but I guess if you go to Alabama, you're pretty talented yourself. I didn't know he was a 5-star prospect, but he just started getting on the field on week 10 at the Jets, right? First game, he goes off 3 catches, 105 yards, and then have their bye week. Then week 12, he comes out against Jacksonville, 2 catches, 94 yards, and a score. Only like catches 1 ball last week because he's in a Josh Allen offense. 27 yards. The dude's getting deep balls nonstop. So if I'm swinging the fences, I'm looking for a guy that can help me just get 100 yards and a touchdown out of nowhere. I'm going Robert Foster. I think he should get more playing time now with Benjamin out the way.
Andre Holmes too, yeah.
Andre Holmes. So I think, I would go Foster. I wouldn't feel great about it, obviously, because Josh Allen's throwing him the ball. But then again, I'm starting Josh Allen this week in the Scott Fish Bowl in the playoffs. So
I like it. I like it. That takes big cojones. And I heard someone on Twitter say today, Kelvin Benjamin getting released. That's the most separation he's had all year.
Twitter is kind to no one.
But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, look, he had 3 targets last week, 3 targets the week before, 4 targets against the Jets where he had 100 yards. He turned that into 3 receptions for $105. I mean, look, this guy has had close to 2. Like he had a 94-yard game, 105-yard game. His average he's averaging 32 yards per reception. So
talking about upside, there you go, right?
There you go, right? It's certainly probably not sustainable, but I'd like to believe that the Bills, right? They're 4-8. I mean, look, they're playing to build for their future, and the best thing they can do is get someone like him on the same page with their franchise quarterback. And I like to believe they're smart enough to kind of give him this opportunity here. He should get it. and he has a big playability. So no, I think that's an awesome guy that's probably just sitting on the free agent pool.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, he's had the quietest 200-yard 2-game stretch of anyone in league history. So I'm
Yeah.
sure he's on the waiver wire. And for anyone who says, go with what got you there, you got to the playoffs, stick with what got you. Man, fuck that noise. You got to figure out what's best for your team that week. And you got to play the matchups. If you're playing against a juggernaut team, you need upside. If you're the number 1 seed, you're playing against the 6th seed who just snuck into the playoffs. Yeah, you can play it safer. But yeah, if you need that upside against a top team, don't be afraid to switch things up.
Mm-hmm. What about Dontrell Inman? Right, we all know him from his San Diego days, but he hasn't really produced massively this year. But the targets, the last few weeks have been there. 6 targets last week, 4 the week before, 6 the week before that. Andrew Luck is his quarterback, so he's not. It's not like he has Josh Allen thrown to him. They laid a absolute literally a goose egg right last week, and now they travel to play the Texans, who obviously are they're the hottest team in the league right now as far as their win streak is concerned. But I mean, can you see if this game turns into a shootout, someone like him or which outside of T.Y. Hilton, are there any receivers worth the dart throw on the Colts?
Yeah, I guess Inman would be the next guy, but it's basically just Ebron and Hilton that are just dominating targets. I mean, Ebron got like 16 last week or something nuts. So, yeah, I don't know. I would rather play, I think, someone like Deshaun Hamilton and just hope and just play the talent over a journeyman like Inman. But like you said, it is hard to argue with his targets. And at this point in the season, if you're struggling and you lost Emmanuel Sanders and you need a 3rd or 4th receiver, I guess you could do worse because I think this game will be pretty high scoring. I think there was actually a sharp move on the over in this game early in the week, so it could end up being one of the highest scoring on the slate.
I like it. All right. So any last piece of advice for fantasy owners getting into playoff mode?
Don't take your foot off the gas, even if you have a bye this week. Start picking up players, work that waiver wire, keep an eye on games, and we're gonna get teams here now. Now we're in these last 4 weeks of the season, especially teams that are out of the playoff hunt. We talked about Robert Foster. These younger guys are going to start getting reps, so keep very close attention to the snap counts, routes run, targets drawn, carries, because there will be a change in the guard, and if you're not on top of it, you can end up starting a guy in week 15 that hasn't been getting as much playing time as he has the rest of the year. So, even if you don't need a guy like Kenneth Dixon, say you got 4 strong running backs, still scoop them anyway so your opponents can't get them.
Yeah, no, that's certainly an effective strategy. I mean, especially, you see it things get tense and our league. I'm already out of the playoffs, right? But as soon as James Conner went down and I had this whole cluster fuck of running backs, everyone's all the playoff teams are keeping an eye on who's picking up who, because a few weeks down the line that could be the winning piece in a championship game. But no, I like what you said. I think we've highlighted it before. The past is the past. It's great. Your team that has gotten to the playoffs, right? You should feel good about them. But at the end of the day, that's not going to win you a championship. You have to make the best plays going forward. And if you're unwilling to budge, if you're so caught up in, week 7, week 10, week 12, you might get left behind, because there are there are a lot of opportunities being created with teams that are changing gears with. We're going to keep on seeing it more and more. And we're not saying build a whole lineup, right, of high risk plays, but even that extra flex play or that extra 4th receiver, if you're in a deeper league, could make the world of a difference. And we see it every year. I mean, how many guys right now that we don't even they're not household names, come next year, they're going to be next year's sleepers, right? In redraft leagues. We see it all the time. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, take it back to the Arian Foster days, right? Before Arian Foster had his incredible kind of come to the league season, he started getting carries towards the end of last season, right? And he still ended up falling to I think his average draft position was the 10th round. But I remember my buddy Ryan, he was real sharp on it. He was very he was watching Arian Foster. He said, "This guy's nice. I'm gonna get him," and that he ended up having a monster season. So, if your season's done, doesn't mean that you can't pick up little nuggets, including like you said, someone like Robert Foster, right? Like who no most people are going to look past. No one like it's technically the number 2 or 3 receiver on the Bills.
Right, and as if you're playing DFS, if you're out of your fantasy playoffs, it's becoming more and more like preseason DFS, where information and playing time reigns supreme. So, by knowing who these guys that are playing later in the year, you can gain an edge in your DFS contest too. I mean, just like you said, it's going to be guys out of nowhere that do things. Over the last couple of years, you look at Week 16 Fantasy Championship Week, running backs who have scored in the top 10. You have guys like DeAndre Washington of Oakland, Zach Zenner of Detroit. You have Gio Bernard, Bilal Powell, CJ
Peyton
Anderson.
Barber last year.
Right, Peyton Barber. You have guys that are legit, and that's Week 16. Once we get to Week 17, it looks like a preseason, a legit preseason list. So just keep an eye on things. It's that's the most important thing right now is keeping up to date with that and not being afraid to start guys that haven't done anything all year because the guard is changing. So
exactly, a new opportunity is key to be like aware of. And like sometimes some people they're so caught up in how good their team is, they don't even want to, like, I'm in the playoffs, why would I do anything different, right? Don't be that person.
Don't be that person. Don't be that guy. Yeah,
don't be that guy.
Keep improving your team.
And don't be the guy that says, "Oh, I'd tear my Achilles for $20 million."
Please don't be that guy. You're not allowed to listen to this podcast if you say that.
All right, you guys, best of luck. Hope that you guys survive and advance. If you have any questions, at Occupy Fantasy, the daily plug will be up. We'll have the Thursday game and Periscope as usual. Thursday game is going to be fun. Jags and I don't know why they scheduled that. I remember 2 years ago they did that, and I was like, why? These are the two teams I just don't want to watch on Thursday night.
Well, you make the schedule. You know damn well in Week 14 that's not going to be a good game.
Oh my god!
So, like you said, yeah. If you have questions, feel free to shout us out. We like I said, we do DFS, but we get a lot of questions that are mentions about season long too, and we love answering them. So if you have those questions, definitely send them over.
Perfect. All right, guys, take care. Best of luck. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, see you.